All right, everybody. I see a few people are starting to join. Welcome to Coffee and Conversions, our last one for the year. We are really excited to have an awesome panel to talk to you guys more about growth marketing strategies in 2022. We are a little bit early today, so I'm going to give everybody a few more minutes to jump on board. And again, as always, feel free to engage in the chat, ask our panelists any direct questions you want, let us know where you're coming in from. We're here to make connections, so feel free to connect. And just letting everybody know, this event is being recorded and we will be sending it to you on demand later on this week. So if anybody is signing up that won't be able to attend today, that's okay. Catch the on-demand version later this week. Okay. All righty. All right, party people. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And all right, let's kick us off. So my name is Meg Ugenti. I am your host of Coffee and Conversions here at Focus USA. We host these monthly marketing events hosted by marketers for marketers to have everybody come together, make some connections, and inspire some awesome new ideas for their own marketing efforts, for their own clients. So feel free to reach out to me if you want to become a panelist or host a solo event on this stage. We are all about hearing what's going to be next and best for marketing. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce two of our panelists, Amanda Davis and Kelly Grover. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi, Meg.
Hi. And also just letting everybody know, Jacob was going to be joining us. He might pop in, but there's been a little bit of water damage out in LA. So we're wishing him the best. And if he is able to join us, we are going to welcome him on. So we're going to give it just a couple more minutes because, again, we're a little bit early. And then I'm going to give the floor over to Amanda and Kelly to introduce themselves and all the awesome things that they've got going on. But in the meantime, what is everybody looking forward to in 2022? Are there any topics of conversation you want our panelists to discuss that you're kind of getting into for next year? We are really excited to kind of be kicking this off. We're going to be talking data. We're going to be talking B2B marketing, automation, technology. So get ready. We're very, very excited. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let Amanda Davis take the floor. Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Meg. So my name is Amanda. I've been in B2B marketing for over 15 years. I've had the pleasure of working for some of the world's biggest companies and working for startups and anything and everything in between. Earlier this year, I started my own marketing agency, Hudson Davis Communications. And now we just branched out. So now we're also a full service media production and advertising house. So very exciting things. And I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Amanda. It's great to have you. Coming from corporate America to starting your own business is a very exciting venture. And I know a lot of the people that signed up for this event are in that boat. So I'm excited to pick your brain more about that. Kelly, tell us a little bit about you and your journey and Acoustic.
Sure. Thanks, Meg. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Kelly Grover, I am the Vice President of Growth for Acoustic. I have just shy of 20 years of sales and marketing experience. Actually started on the sales side and kind of worked back into marketing and have been in marketing for the past 10 years across different verticals, primarily in B2B, but Acoustic actually is a B2C open source omni-channel marketing and experience analytics platform. So a ton of overlap and a really great kind of connector between the B2B and the B2C world. So lots of thoughts around ABM and automation and all the things that you already said that we were going to talk about today, Meg. So excited.
Great. I'm so happy to hear that. Hi, John. Thanks for joining us again. Happy to have you here. How's sunny Phoenix? Hopefully sunny. Thanks so much. So guys, as we start digging in, again, we hope that Jacob's able to join us, but otherwise the ladies are holding down the fort today. So I wanted to kind of kick everything off with a little bit of, when we think about growth marketing and all of the things that have impacted the tactics and the solutions and the technology that we use to gain new customers and promote our brands, whether that's B2B or B2C, Kelly, how do you think growth marketing is changing in 2022? And what do you think should be some of the things that companies need to be looking out for or keeping in mind when they start planning their growth marketing strategies for next year?
Sure. So growth, I think, is a very deliberate word, right? And I think it spans more than just marketing. And I think that's an incredible opportunity. When I think forward to 2022 and trends, certainly technology, digital automation, right? All of those things, I think it's not even a trend anymore. It's reality. So for me, when I think about, what do you now do with that information? I think it really forces not just the marketing department, but really the entire go-to-market team to be aligned. Because when I think about technology and the digital revolution, it's about creating an engine that amplifies, right? But like any database, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? You can't scale chaos. And so I think one of the lovely side effects is it forces some of these alignment conversations that maybe in a pre-digital world you could get away with not having, right? But you really can't jump into creating an elegant tech stack and leaning into the digital revolution if you don't have some of these fundamental questions answered. So things like your TAM. I'm a huge proponent of building a bottom-up TAM is like one of these first exercises, because again, it forces this refinement. Another example is your messaging stack, right? Like when you think about the opportunity that your tech stack and all of that automation affords you, if you're plugging in disparate messaging, it's just chaos, right? You're not reinforcing anything. So the more that you can align around your core value prop, your key pillars, your competitive positioning, then your system starts to work for you. But I would argue if you don't have those things set up before jumping really into the digital revolution and creating this tech stack, I actually don't know how much it's an asset versus a liability. I think it looks like you're doing a lot, but when you actually look at what all of those touch points mean for your customer base, I think you'll see a big difference between those who aligned on those fundamentals up front and those who just started using all of the technology because, gosh, it's there, everybody's doing it. We need to be doing it too. So that would be my one kind of key takeaway, right? The technology is coming. That's not even a question anymore. It's how do you use it properly?
And plan for it, right? Like it's intention behind the technology to make sure you're getting the most out of it. I mean, Kelly, what do you think are some of the bigger pitfalls that people or companies that aren't planning well enough ahead? What are some of the hurdles that they'll have to jump through later?
Yeah, I mean, logistics isn't exciting, but it really is a backbone. And I almost think of the tech stack like a database, right? So, for anybody, and probably most of us on this call have implemented a database or a CRM, and they know you have all of these conversations around mapping fields and pushing information. It's the same, right? How are all of these different systems going to interact? Who's the recipient of the information? What does it need to look like? What processes do we need to help govern the use of the tech stack? I don't want to minimize the effort in putting in the tech stack, but I would almost argue that it's all of the other stuff, the rules of engagement, the processes, the SLAs, the integrations that actually are just as important, if not more important. And, some advice that I would give to folks is maybe twofold. Start simple. You can always add complexity, but you can't peel that complexity back once it's in there, and create a tech roadmap, right? So you can see how you're going to build that tech stack, the order in which you're going to do it. And again, it'll force some of those conversations around when do we add that complexity? Just because we don't do it today doesn't mean that we're not doing it. So I think it takes some of the edge off that pressure to be like, gosh, here's all of this exciting stuff. We need to do all of this exciting stuff. If you map it out both within your yourself, your department, and then the company can see, we're going to do it all, but we're going to do it in an orderly fashion. So again, that you're creating an engine that works for you.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that that probably varies by company size, by who your target audience is, you know, what your actual stack looks like now, if you have one, if you're trying to switch something over, what does your database look like now? So I know Focus works with a lot of both B2B and B2C companies. And what I've noticed has been B2C companies are actually adopting this tech way faster than B2B is, right? So Amanda, I know you have a ton of experience in the B2B world from when you were in corporate America to what your clients are doing now. What does that look like on the B2B side for companies adopting this type of tech?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely the speed to which companies accept tech on the B2B side is definitely slower. But that said, I think that the possibilities are super great, right? We're going to continue to see B2C trends bleed into B2B practices, because I think what we're learning with the power of personalization and automation, which is going to continue to grow, personalization is here to stay. And it's one of the easiest ways to grow both your audience and your conversions. So with that growth of personalization comes needing the tech to be able to do that personalization, because the manual processes are just no longer working. So I think we're going to see a lot of B2B companies adopt B2C practices and try to get there. At the end of the day, all of our customers are people. So we're going to want to continue to target them where they are, right? So, you know, this is sort of being replaced by what we used to know as the introduction over lunch, or your boss introducing you to someone and making that connection. It's all going to be digital, and you're going to see more of that cold outreach. And with a cold outreach comes the need for personalization. People want to know that you know who they are and you know what they want. We're also in the B2B space looking at this trend of, okay, now we went through this almost painful process of trying to market to millennials. Because millennials were the workforce. And so you had to market to millennials as the future of B2B marketing. And now it's Gen Z. And so what are they looking for? And that's where you start to see the hiring trends on TikTok and, you know, all these sort of B2B things that are happening on those types of platforms. And now we're getting into marketing towards the generation after that, which is your Gen Alpha. And so this is the first generation that is going to be from soup to nuts, a tech generation. And how do we market to that? How do we give them what they're looking for, the experience that they're looking for, the tone that they're looking for, the messaging that they're looking for in a B2B space, which is going to be heavily driven by B2C practices. And that's when you get into, you know, this generation that is so willing to give up their data. And so what do you do with it? How do you be smart with it? I was having a conversation earlier to say, you know, this idea of like spray and pray just doesn't work anymore. You can't spray this broad messaging and pray that it hits somebody. You've got to be really niche. And the more niche you can get, in particular in B2B marketing, the better you'll see your results. So if you know exactly who, we were talking about this in the pre-session, the need for core audience and persona development at the beginning, like you can't be without that anymore. If you want to drive growth, you've really got to focus on who your persona is, who your audience is. You know, I know exactly who I'm targeting. I know where they work. I know where they're located. I know what they want to hear. I know what platforms they're on. I know what they're subscribing to and what I have to fight for attention with in their inbox. And I know how to message to that. I know how to solve for their problems. And I know how to communicate that to them. If you don't have that, you could bring in the best tech in the world. You'll never know how to use it to your advantage because it won't be geared towards who you're trying to speak to.
You're speaking my language, right? Like audience and data and making sure you know, because audience informs the rest of everything, right? It informs your message, it informs your go-to-market, it informs your creative. So what advice would you give to companies that, especially like B2B side companies that don't have that information? Where do you start to find that information?
I mean, So what's great about B2B companies is they have a lot of data, right? They're B2B companies are some of the biggest data aggregators in the world in all spaces. So my advice is to let your data tell you the story. Your data has so much good information. If you're not looking at it for your answers, you're not looking in the right place. Let your data tell you who your biggest segment of converted audience members is. Let your data tell you when they're most active or where they're most active. Look at your numbers. That is the perfect place to start. Your numbers are going to tell you what's working in your industry and what's not. So it's all going to be obviously very applicable to you and what your company is doing, the industry that you're in. So start with your data. What is that story that your data is telling you? And then let that tell you, okay, well, if the data says this, unless somehow you're not tracking it right and your data is wrong, but I hope that that's not the case. That's a whole separate webinar. If you look at what your data is telling you, you will have a better chance of starting to build out your customer profile. So I would say data first, then build out your core audience, your core persona, your customer profile. Think about the challenges that you're trying to solve for, and think of, okay, if I am a customer, so if somebody came to me with this direct answer, what would I want to hear? And build out solutions that you provide that solve those core problems, and that kind of drive your messaging. And obviously rely on others. So we're marketers here, but I know what my strengths are. My strengths are not the data. My strengths are the storytelling. So I bring on people that are better than me at the data and can analyze the data better. So use the resources around you. This kind of world of a marketing team of one, we're learning, is not an effective way. So really, you can definitely be effective as a team of one, but you're going to be spread so thin that you're not going to get what you need to do at the pace that you need to do it. So rely on others, ask people. That's why we have sessions like this, attend them, ask for a specific session on things that you don't know about. I'm sure Meg has a ton of people in her. Yeah, she'll create the session for you. So I think those are probably the starting points that I would recommend.
That's awesome. And a great reminder to everybody that is attending today, put your contact information in, your company information in, meet each other, connect. That's what we are all here to do. And I take great pride in introducing my network to each other. So please tell us where you are, where you're from, put in your LinkedIn and get to know each other, because that's what we're all here to do. And if you guys have any resources that are available on what Kelly and Amanda are talking about that you want to get to everybody, throw it up in the chat. I'm happy to share it in the email follow-up as well. So Kelly, when we were talking about like data and all of that, B2B companies, funny enough, are these crazy data warehouses, right? But B2C data, I also feel like has much faster signals. You're able to create and cultivate a lot more what we call first party or zero party data with D2C. And your platform at Acoustic, right? Does it serve business to consumer type efforts? Can you talk to us a little bit about that and what you're seeing in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to, it dovetails to what you're saying, Meg, but I think it also supports what Amanda was saying. I think when people think about the digital revolution and automation, like in their mind, shrink the team, right? We're going to now have machines that do what humans used to do. And I think there is some of that, right? Like there are elements where so many of those initial touch points are now on, let's say, the machine side, the marketing side. However, and this is where it dovetails with data, you are seeing the rise of other team members needed to support this tech stack, right? So, sales ops has been a thing for a long, long time. Marketing ops, I would say, is more recent. And I would say even more recent still is this idea of revenue operations, right? That kind of spans the entire go-to-market team from a data standpoint. And that's the reason why, right? Like you can't do what you're doing without knowing the data. So I just wanted to echo Amanda, because I think it's such a critical point. And I think if you don't have the team in place to make the best use of the tech, you're not using the tech. And it dovetails to what you were asking. So yes, Acoustic is meant to be a B2C multi-channel messaging and analytics platform. And so within, let's say, the messaging side, you're going to have your traditional analytics that you would get through all of your messaging platforms, email, mobile, et cetera, but also, you know, really detailed consumer behavioral analytics from the web standpoint. So really high level, not just kind of what I would call post-mort analytics, but real-time analytics. So especially for the direct-to-consumer retails out there, that if you're, let's say you launch a campaign, you don't want to find out the issues during a post-mort, right? You want to know in the moment you're reaching hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, right? So any kink in that customer experience chain actually has a lot of ramifications. So solving it in real time as opposed to after the fact is incredibly beneficial. And that is something that Acoustic uniquely does really, really well, is real-time diagnosis of the customer journey.
And the customer journey continues to change no matter who you are. And I'm going to echo what Amanda said earlier. We're all humans, right? We're all consumers. We are all business leaders. We buy things for our business. We buy things for our household. We buy things for whatever. So if we think about that from a human perspective and how are we going to engage with new brands, it puts a different lens almost in what you're doing when you're developing this and looking for certain technology. Which brings me to my next segment, trends or fads in 2022. What are the things that we need to be looking out for that are going to really take hold? And what are the things that are maybe just another passing fad in terms of technology? So with the use of omni-channel marketing becoming forefront, and a lot of the conversations that I'm having with other marketers and my own clients, it's really changing the way that we're implementing a lot of these growth campaigns, because we are now having to think about it from an every touch point perspective, where everything was very siloed and has been in the past. Is this leaving a gap or an opportunity for marketers that they need to be aware of, Kelly? What are some of your thoughts on that?
I lean very heavy towards opportunity. I don't know if gap would be kind of the word that I would put at the opposite end. I think there's traps, right? So if you're not being mindful of the things that we're talking about here, I do think there are some stumbling blocks along the way, but most of this is opportunity. So to piggyback off of what we were just saying, if the majority or at least a greater portion of the customer journey is now guided by these digital tools, that's marketing's home turf, right? So now we're increasing the amount of the customer journey owned by marketing. On top of that, marketers, just by definition, certainly over the past couple of decades, have been data-driven. And so you're combining all of these skill sets that are foundational for marketing and now applying it to the entire customer journey. And I would argue to the entire go-to-market strategy, which puts marketers in a position to really own that go-to-market strategy more than even just a couple of years ago. And you're seeing it. There's been several articles I've read that one of the growing pipelines to being a CEO is being a CMO for that reason, right? You're sitting at the hub of market need, the technology to get you there, and aligning the teams to do that in a way that maximizes your ROI. That's your business strategy, right? Like that's not just marketing strategy anymore. And that's where I go from an opportunity standpoint. I really see it being kind of the sky's the limit. The trend that I think isn't a trend anymore in a good way is account-based marketing. And I think we've said it without saying it on this call multiple times already. Amanda, you said it, like you have to know who you're targeting and you need to be laser focused in how you approach them. That's account-based marketing, right? But I think why it's not a trend anymore is it is your go-to-market strategy. You've got all of this technology that enables you to be laser focused. If you're not doing that, your competitors are, right? Like it's table stakes at this point. It isn't a nice to have. So to me, I don't know if there are any fads that I see peeling away so much as I seeing the things that felt like fads or felt like trends, maybe if we were talking a year or two ago. Again, just table stakes at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you're talking about both B2B and B2C marketplaces. And even for like our own company growth, right? For us as marketers and our agencies, when we're looking at that too, it's a lot of things like practice what you preach, right? We do a lot of this stuff for ourselves, which just makes us better marketers and better business leaders, right? So one of the things that have come up for us recently has been a lot of voice, right? So have you guys heard of Clubhouse? Are you in Clubhouse? All of that good stuff. So between like Clubhouse and TikTok and all of these new platforms, again, that are really there for that, yes, millennial, but yes, getting ready for what Amanda was saying earlier, the Gen Alpha market. Do you think, I'm going to open this up to both of you ladies, do you think those are here to stay? Do you think that we're really heading more in that direction in terms of voice and on-demand videos and all that good stuff?
Video for sure. And you'll see, especially in major tech companies, algorithms are starting to favor video. So Instagram and Facebook have been very open about the fact that their algorithms favor video. You're going to see a lot of brands transition to Reels. So the video is not going anywhere. I haven't done much in the terms of voice, although I will say Clubhouse is wildly popular, podcasts wildly popular. So, whether I think it's a fad or a lasting trend will be determined. I certainly think it's definitely something that brands are looking at, and brands are now having their own podcasts and they're becoming wildly successful and they're reaching audiences that they never could have imagined. So I definitely think it's something to pay attention to, but video storytelling, video messaging, we've just spent 2 years locked in our homes without a lot of interpersonal interaction. And so people want to see you, people want to see you, right? So the trend of kind of hiding behind your brand is going to dissipate. I think people will expect you to be more personal. People want to hear more and more from the CEO, from the CMO. They want to hear from you as a person and what you think as a person. They're going to want you to represent your brand. And the brand experience is going to be much more connected to all areas of the business. So Kelly is spot on. ABM is a massive trend. And what that means is in the B2B space, sales enablement is a massive, massive thing that is not going away. It's going to become more and powerful. How marketers empower their sales teams with tools like Seismic and, however you're using it. We're looking at things like not just your existing accounts, not just net new, but how do you, what we call wake the dead and re-engage past prospects with these new technologies, with video messaging. How can we do experiential things that help us along our ABM journey? And that line between sales and marketing is becoming ever so blurred under what Kelly handles, which is this growth strategy. But from a brand perspective, especially in the B2B space, this is going to touch your brand, touches your people from the minute they walk in the door. So your marketers are going to start to cross over between marketing and HR, between marketing and finance, between marketing and every other, operations, between marketing and all these other departments, because when it comes to how your brand positions itself from the minute somebody walks in the door from an interview or the minute a customer enters your funnel to the minute they leave, how you say goodbye to an employee is a part of the brand experience. And so marketing and marketers, just like Kelly said, on their way from CMO to CEO, brands are no longer looking for just a CEO. They're looking for a chief growth officer or chief revenue officer. And one of the key components is that they're going to be strong marketers.
Marketing feeds into so many different areas. So does that, you think, create an opportunity, I don't want to say like cross-pollinating, but almost like cross-training in communications within your own company? Because like you said, at every touch point, you're interacting with your customer at some point, whether that's through receivables, HR, more than just what your forward brand facing communication is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Something I didn't even think about, but I'm always learning from you ladies. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I mean, if your brand tagline is, simple something and the experience isn't simple from an AR perspective, from a sales perspective, from, brands are having to think about that because your touch points are everywhere these days.
Very, very true. And it's one of those things that I don't think a lot of people really necessarily think about unless they're in marketing. But the marketing to sales, as Kelly and Amanda, you both have said, it's so important. And I feel like marketing departments and sales departments have gotten so much closer, and they've had to through the digital transformation and everything like that, that local businesses are having to do, to large healthcare networks, to big corporate, Fortune 100 companies. And it's interesting to see all of them are still kind of on that same path, and how much more important marketing has become as a team of like its own sales member team almost.
Yeah. And silos are going to become much more apparent. So if you have silos within your organization and communication challenges because of silos, if you have data silos and you're not sharing between operations, data, and marketing, these silos are going to become much, much more apparent, and they're going to create larger problems than ever before, accelerated by the integrations of tech stacks.
So I will say I've seen opportunity too as well. And this is where I think the data becomes so critical, because to me, data is like the great equalizer, right? It like peels back the emotion and kind of gets everybody on the same page. And I've seen, as we kind of map out the go-to-market strategy through the lens of the digital revolution, I've actually seen horse trading go on. And I've done this between marketing and sales, where it's almost like mind-boggling to think like 10 years ago, like I'm going to give up my FTE for you, or vice versa. That's crazy. But when you look at how the different teams really can drive value along that customer journey, and the data supports it, and we can say, gosh, I can do this for you at scale, maybe better from a use of your time. Let me scale up this, you scale down that, but then vice versa, right? When we look at sales enablement, let's say for the bottom of the funnel, maybe that's when that horse trading works in reverse. Gosh, that's the human component, right? Let's peel back the marketing and make sure that our sales team has everything that they need to be successful. But I do think, going off of what Amanda said with regards to silos, it's such an opportunity to like tear down those walls and think about it as a growth team, as a go-to-market team. We're not marketing and sales anymore, right? We're all covering the funnel together.
Absolutely. And do you think that the adoption of technology is making that easier? And if we're thinking about that from, some type of like transaction e-commerce company where sales are kind of immediate, you're starting to see the return on your investment a lot quicker than you will on like a B2B side. Do you feel like that's easier to implement, or do you have any thoughts on that as it relates to that type of audience over just B2B?
I do think in general, it's easier to implement something like that the more that the technology and the data supports it, right? It's very hard to say to somebody, we're going to take this thing away from you, or we're going to automate this thing that used to have a human element without the data to support it. Where I've been successful, and I think it's because this is just how the conversation should go, is we're going to automate this thing because the human isn't adding value. And then let's put the human component where it does add value, right? And, Amanda, you've said it, and Meg, you've said it, we're all consumers as well as marketers. And so I don't need to talk to somebody from Amazon to have one-click ordering. It would not add value to me, right? Just as a very simple example. So why would Amazon ever do that, right? They're going to add human components where it does make sense. But I think if we all think like that as marketers, let's put the humans where the humans move the needle, and put automation and digital where that can offer a really rich experience at a fraction of a cost, or just, with a higher ROI. Why would we not do that? But again, I think the data marrying with the tech is your foot in the door to have that conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where you're seeing a lot more, I would say, across the board, right? Something as simple as a chatbot on your website, right? Something super simple like that. Some way to engage with somebody through a text message, because maybe they don't want to get on the phone and talk to somebody, and they just have a quick question. That's just part of the whole experience that, customer service needs to think about, but also marketing now needs to think about. And it's just creating that room for growth opportunity. Great. So I'm going to kind of start opening this up to any questions from anybody in the audience. We really do want to hear from you, but I have some kind of open forum questions for everybody. So if you're in the audience and you have a point of view on this, let us know. You might not have your face on the screen here, but we're happy to hear you out. So when we talk about a lot of the conversations that we're having about growth marketing in 2022, what are those looking like for your clients right now? Amanda, do you want to take that one to start?
So my clients are really in an interesting space because marketing for B2B companies at the onset of the pandemic was very uncertain. And so now we're sort of all getting much more comfortable. And from an agency perspective, what we see a lot of clients wanting is more marketing, more messaging. How do we do this better? From a growth perspective, we are seeing a lot of interest in paid media opportunities where we once saw a heavy shift in earned or owned media opportunities. So that's an interesting shift. And I think I'm not sure exactly. I have maybe an idea of where I think it comes from, but I'm seeing businesses want to put more spend behind their marketing efforts, probably to accelerate revenue, to generate revenue. So, I think that's kind of an interesting thing. But when it comes to growth, really, content is king. It's just what I'm seeing. All of our clients are looking for really good content. Even when you talk about the things like chatbots, that touches marketing because you've got a copywriter in there, you've got a UX designer in there, you've got, all these things. So content is really something that all of our brands, all of our clients are looking at across the board and helping them understand how powerful it is. So it's not just understanding the data that you have or using tech to collect that data or accelerate your performance, but what messaging you put in front of them, when, why, how, that whole thing. But you can get a message to them easily through tech and through data. If you don't have the right content, that is the big thing that I'm seeing the focus on in the growth mindset, is taking a look at our messaging. A lot of our brands are going through a rebrand, not on the visual sense, but on the content sense. So much more personalized messaging, much more personality in the messaging. So brands are starting to get a lot more comfortable with their messaging to audiences. And so, you'll see a lot more personality. I am obsessed with the Duolingo brand and their personality. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, it is stellar and spot on. But I will say, our clients are asking for us to really guide them. And that's where we talked about this earlier, this B2B companies starting to operate like B2C messengers. They're asking us to guide them. What do our customers want to hear? What is going to make them sign that contract, right? So the B2B sales cycle is super long. I mean, a short sales cycle is 6 months, right? So we look from anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. How do I keep that person engaged? That goes to your messaging. That goes to your content. What content are you putting in front of them? Are you gating it? What are you gating? What are you not gating? How often are you touching base with them? Are you inviting them to webinars? Are you touching them 7 times? Are you sending them emails? Are you connecting with them on social? All of this content. So all kinds of marketers have had to become content marketers, and our clients want us to tell them what to do. The other thing that I see kind of rising and that our clients are asking for is for content to transcend between customer or prospect facing content into thought leadership content. So how can we show that we're a leader in this space by publishing our own articles, creating our own blogs, getting in the media, and accepting editorial opportunities and things that show that as I am CEO of X company, but I pick up, a magazine and then I see this person that's an expert, I'm going to go look at their company and see what they do. And so that credibility, trustworthiness, that is a big, big, big theme across our entire portfolio. It just also so happens that almost all of our clients are looking for a visual refresh. So I think really what that's telling me is companies are seeing it's obviously not the end of the pandemic, but this place that we're in because of the pandemic as a new starting point. So companies are kind of wanting to restart efforts that they haven't taken a look at, like your paid media in contrast to earned or owned. They're wanting to put money towards PR and thought leadership where they hadn't before. So really, they're kind of taking a fresh perspective. And a lot of brands, almost 100% of our clients are looking towards some sort of fresh perspective. We've also got the end of year stuff. So new year, new you is going to kind of be a big thing. So really that fresh perspective is something we're seeing almost entirely in our portfolio.
Yeah, I can relate, right? New year, new everything, new marketing plans, new logos, new refresh, new data, right? New data strategies. New is kind of
budgets.
New budgets, exactly. Oh, can we all raise our hands for new budgets?
Yeah.
Kelly, what about you? What kind of conversations are you having around growth with some of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think Amanda touched on a couple of things that I was going to say as well. Authenticity, right? Like if we're leaning into digital, however that means, for more of the customer journey, then, at the base level, think about like what used to be an initial handshake and a lunch with a human is now an email or a webinar or a podcast or a video, right? And people sense things with all of their senses, right? We want to have an experience. We want to feel something. We want to be moved. We want to connect with a brand. And when it's not a human, when it's, whatever this digital atmosphere is, you can't sacrifice that authenticity. And I couldn't agree more that people are being really bold with their messaging. And I think some of it, depending on the brand, is funny, but there's an intent behind it, right? It's very deliberate. They want people to connect with their brand. And for those where, humor isn't the way that you lean in, it could be any other emotion or just creating a bold visual experience. And so I couldn't agree more that it's the messaging, it's the visuals that you use. I'm seeing a lot of refreshes as well. The other thing I would say is I think human behavior is we're all kind of reevaluating what's a good use of my time, right? Like our whole time clock was reset during the pandemic, and where we might, go for a week to, an offsite event or a conference. We didn't do that, right? But I actually got a ton of great content through all of these other channels and forums like this and things like that. And so I think people are really critical of, gosh, you're asking for my time. You better make a really good use of it. And so I think that leans also into that experience and forces marketers to kind of up their game. But I also see it as an opportunity in the sense that if you do that, if you deliver that thought leadership, that value, something that's more than just fluff for people, they're going to come back for more. Now you've got an engaged consumer, an engaged audience. And if you do it well, because kind of that brick and mortar, let's say, channel has gone away in favor of digital, now you can amplify that message, right? Like you're unshackled by a lot of the physical things that would have shackled us pre-pandemic. So I think those that get ahead of the curve and really create those authentic experiences, it's not just going to get us back to baseline. I think, again, you can amplify across channels in ways that you couldn't before. And for me, like one just really easy example is, other channels like partnerships and alliances, right? Like if you create a wealth of really compelling content and then you leverage other channels to amplify it, it costs you next to nothing, right? But your reach grows exponentially. And so to me, that is kind of where I take Amanda's comment around authenticity and then think, okay, how do I now leverage this for growth?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I've seen a lot, the partnership marketing aspect, right? From like a B2B perspective, I've seen a lot more people, coming in, joining forces and solving problems together because, we touched on it, the last 2 years have been very different, very quickly. You know what I mean? It's been a long 2 years, but everything happened very quickly. So a lot of companies have really kind of tried to come together, adapt, solve problems together, which means you're also, seeing a cross section of reaching their audiences together, which creates even more opportunity for growth as well. One of the things that I can speak to this on from a data perspective is I absolutely agree the content has to be there, the messaging has to be there, but timing is also a really big factor now, right? You want to make sure that wonderful message that you're delivering that's solving this great problem or that's promoting you as a thought leader, from that perspective is also reaching someone at a time when they're very likely to engage with it. And, you don't always do that on the first try. Right? So repetition is important, but not to the point of exhaustion. That's a lot of the talks that we're having right now. Is okay, how do we reach this audience at the right time with the right message, but not overindulge, because everybody is fighting for attention right now. You know what I mean? Everything in the digital space, we talked about new budgets, raise the roofs, but also pricing and for paid media especially has gone way, way up just because of the sheer cost of doing business, because everybody's doing it. But I also think it creates a lot of opportunity for more measurement and more data, which, hey, I'm all for.
Our pillars throughout everything are personalized, relevant, timely. Everything's got to be personalized, relevant, timely. If it's not any one of those things, it's going to fall flat. How do you be personalized, relevant, and timely? Your data will tell you. So that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And if you have all three of those things, you're likely to get a home run.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to kind of keep doing it, right? It's like just one campaign isn't going to get you through the end of the year. You have to stay committed to the process.
Yeah. And on the B2C side, they're able to try and fail and see what works and do that much, much more quickly. Where on the B2B side, it takes a lot. So stick with it. And, if you're a marketer who has to show these types of things to your executives, have an open and honest conversation. I'd like to try these things and see how they perform, and just kind of set them up to support you and enable you to be able to do that testing on the B2B side. Because it's definitely, and again, the sales cycle is much longer. So you might not know how your A/B testing performed for 6 months. And then by the time you know how it performed, you're well into some other priority. So be patient. And one of the things that you touched on that I think is spot on is brands collaborating. And what that leads to and lends itself to is credibility. What people are looking for is credibility, trustworthiness. And so, brands are using each other to say, hey, I'm not known for this space, but we've partnered with this brand that is. Take a look at how credible we are. So brand partnerships, that's why people are partnering with influencers. You trust that influencer, you trust their credibility in that space. And so brands are partnering with influencers to lend that credibility. So that's something that I think is really, really huge and probably a trend that's not going away. It may shift and change faces. So it may establish itself in some other way. But I think that need that we're going to have as brands to showcase our credibility, in particular in areas that we may not have been known for. We have several clients that say we're struggling because our clients knew us for this one thing, but now we've created this technology and now we do thing B, C, D, E, F. How do I get them to know us for those other things too?
Preach. I'm right there with you. Focus USA, just for our own story, right? If I'm going to be pretty candid here, started out as, just a data company, right? For 1994, that's what we did. We did lists for direct mail. Look at us today, and we're a fully functional data technology company with an entire media division to help you reach it's a completely different world. And I think a lot of companies that have been around in the marketing space, in the tech space, in the whatever space, that have survived through this, digital transformation has had to evolve. So it very much makes sense that their messaging needs to evolve. All of the things that we just talked about for 2022 strategies, all is kind of coming to a head now, because a lot of that reinvention is happening now.
Yeah. And as people, we've evolved, right? We see so many people who 2 years ago didn't use Zoom. They were married to in-person meetings. And so as brands, we're evolving as people evolve. I know how to do things I didn't know how to do because of the pandemic. I decided I wanted to learn how to pickle things, and again, a whole separate webinar. It's been a time. But again, so now brands have the opportunity to reach me where they didn't previously. And so that's where this sort of need for credibility and onus towards paid media and trying things that we haven't tried before, because we're becoming consumers of things that we hadn't previously become consumers of. Zoom touched people that they never thought that they were going to touch, because now they're, touching people in their personal lives who are having baby showers via Zoom, where that was a totally in-person thing previously. So know that your audience may have changed. And if you haven't taken a look at your data or your messaging in a while, take a look at it now, refresh it. It's time.
Absolutely. Well, you talked about reach and technology and how that's really expanded reach. Kelly, I know you have a ton of experience on the global marketing scale as well. Is there any parallels that you're seeing with some of, international markets to what we're seeing now in the US in terms of growth and technology?
Yeah, I mean, it's enabling, in every other sense that we've already talked about. I almost think of it like a gap analysis. So like Amanda was just saying, if you want to be seen as something that you're not, you can do a refresh, which could still be a great first step, right? But you can also partner with somebody or look for an influencer that fills that gap, that starts to shift how people view your brand or increase that trust factor. And I think that plays out on the global scale as well, right? So if you want to go into a new market, especially when you're talking about a new geography, it's an incredible lift. If you've never done it before, if you don't have the in-house expertise, I'm telling you, you're in for a slog. It just is. It's one of those things, even if you have the expertise, it takes time, right? Because foreign companies coming into new markets, you're already at a trust deficit. There's language barriers, there's logistical barriers, there's so many things to consider. But if you partner with somebody who's already there, who's already established, not only can you tap into that infrastructure, but you're tapping into that brand identity, right? And so it is an incredibly enabling way to increase reach. And I don't want to oversimplify it, because it is even quite complicated, even if you're tapping into a partner ecosystem. However, once you get that engine running, you can take those core assets that you already need to create for your, let's call it your domestic market, and either just distribute them on a global scale or with modifications, right? Local language translation, things like that, so that they're relevant. Your reach can expand greater than the resources need to do that. I don't know if I'm saying that really as eloquently as I could, right? But the bang for your buck really is quite substantial. So again, I'm oversimplifying something that's really quite complicated in reality. But I think if you have that gap analysis and you think about where you want to go, partnerships, alliances, co-marketing should be a great thing that you're considering as a first step to get you there.
Absolutely. I think especially we've talked to a few clients that are very well established in Europe or in the Middle East, and they're coming into the US, which is a very big challenge in and of itself. And just making sure that you're aligning with, the US has got some powerful brands, very, very well established here. So if you can find someone to partner with, it's almost like skipping the line a little bit if you're trying to start something up in the US if you're an unknown brand. So one of the other things that we're having a lot of conversations around is testing. test, test, test again. We're a data company, so we're constantly talking about testing audiences and strategies and things like that. What do you feel is, and this could be a very oversimplified question, so feel free to use your expertise to freely correct me. Is there an optimal test rate for, testing a new message or doing a new product launch? Is there any rules of the trade that you guys have any advice on?
I might jump in, and only because it ties back to something that I said earlier, and that is create a tech roadmap and start simple, because to me, it's all an experiment. And experiments, you should hold things constant and then have one, maybe two variables, right? But you really want to limit your variables, because then the results, you don't know what the cause and effect is. This is no different, right? And so if you've got this incredibly complicated tech stack and likely some data issues that go with it, you can iterate as often or not often as you want, and it really doesn't make a difference, right? It's not the schedule of those iterations, it's the hygiene of the data coming back, right? And you can't fix that. So I would say that is why you want to start simple, understand what's going on, control those variables, then iterate, then iterate, then iterate, because as that testing data comes back in, now you can consume it. Now it means something, and you can use it to inform future strategy. I would say that is something I've seen multiple times, both with folks that I've consulted for, even within the companies that I've been in, that we've jumped into almost creating these Frankenstein systems because you want all of this functionality. But then when you actually want to look at the data, it's like, well, gosh, this did well, didn't do well. What's the why behind it? And now you're trying to find those signals within the noise. And it's, if you can even get to that when you've got kind of an over-engineered system, it can be really hard to digest and circulate that data in a way that it's impactful. I would rather have one clean data point that is a clean signal that is actionable, that everybody understands, than spreadsheet after spreadsheet of stuff that people just look at it, glaze over, and it does nothing.
Right. Especially if you're looking at that data to then justify to your executives or to the higher ups or the owners to go in and test something else. If they can't understand the data that's coming back, I love how you put it, like, finding the signals within the noise is, you have to be able to do that if you're going to get anywhere. Amanda, do you have anything to expand on?
Totally. Oh my gosh. So good. I would also say sometimes okay, so I'll just say I'm super type A. Okay. If you couldn't tell. And so a lot of times we have this tendency to want to wait until things are perfect. The campaign has got to be perfect. I've got to have all these things planned out. I've got to know Don't be afraid in these instances to fail fast. So try something. If you're not sure, try it. See how it goes. Fail fast and fix quickly is something that I say. So if it's not perfect, that's okay. See how it goes. Now, the other side to that coin is because we are all consumers and we all expect things to behave a certain way, right? We've gotten used to the notifications and the way things look on our iPhones and Androids, and the way things behave from these big companies that have all this budget, and who are really, these companies are dictating what we expect from our experience. Let's be quite honest. So yes, fail fast and fix early. But also beware, because if things aren't behaving from a B2B perspective the way we would expect them to from a B2C perspective, as we are all consumers, that is also a reflection of you. So where that kind of falls in like not these two opposites of the coin is understand what your threshold is. And understand what your audience's threshold is. So let them tell you via your data, and like, don't be afraid to do a survey that gives you data. And like, brands are so afraid to interact. And so what that becomes is brands speaking at you instead of to you. So really, if they would just do like a quick Instagram survey or a quick, like, LinkedIn surveys are blowing up, right? That's one of the things that I see the most interaction with from a B2B perspective. And I'm on LinkedIn all day, every day. So that's where my audience is. So if you want to know about LinkedIn, I'm your girl. But like, use the survey tool and just say, if we were to try this, how would you feel? and then try it, fail fast and see how it goes. So find your threshold, find your tolerance, and then go from there.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you. Data, and more data. And we touched on it very briefly before, but B2C companies are doing this zero-party data collection a ton, but B2B companies have that room to do so as well. Maybe not at scale, but for, like Kelly mentioned, the signals that are important and they're going to mean something to you. If you have intention behind, setting that up on the back end, absolutely do so. And so I'm going to close this out. So both of you are marketing leaders. You have, Kelly, you have such a history of helping, companies in their own growth and your own. Amanda, you've started this awesome new agency this year that has seen unprecedented growth. What is some of the advice that you would give to some of the other agency owners or marketing leaders to kind of help expand their own growth, not only in their business growth, but also as marketers, like trying to stay ahead of the game in 2022? Any advice?
As somebody who took a chance in the middle of a pandemic and started their own business, if there was any time to believe in yourself and your abilities and just like try something new, now is it. We're all kind of in this place of being more understanding than ever before, because we can connect with each other about this thing, this pandemic that we had never been able to. I could connect with anybody, whether or not I know them, by saying, how did COVID impact you? Did you get it? Did you know somebody? Like we have this unprecedented thing. Try something. If you are thinking about starting an agency, just do it. Like that's kind of been my thing for the year, is like whatever you wanted to do, just do it.
Absolutely. So now you can see my type A come out. So mine is, I would say, less inspirational, but more practical nonetheless. But I think it actually is inspirational. I think a lot of people, especially if you're not marketers or you're junior marketers or you're, maybe other C-suite leaders who want to participate in all of this opportunity, what's the first step, right? Like we say ABM and we know immediately how to make it actionable. I think for most folks, they're still struggling with that. So my advice is create a framework, right? And I know that's like so not exciting and it doesn't have to be elaborate, but understanding the right first step is like 90% of it, right? Like, so what are those core questions? Keep it on one page. Like when I say framework, like if you're going onto the back of the page, you probably overthought it. But like I wrote a Forbes article on building a bottom-up TAM, like stuff like that. Like what is that first step so people can wrap their brains around what this strategy is going to look like? Because honestly, I think everything after that is 1,000 times easier, and it's going to answer these questions. It's going to build momentum. It's going to give you the data to ask for more money or break down the silos, right? And so I think people who can capture on paper the stuff that feels very esoteric and fuzzy, but exciting for others, like you guys have the keys to the castle, right? Like folks are going to come to you because it's like all of this excited energy. I don't know what to do with it. Meg, help me, right? Amanda, help me turn this into something. Now you're a strategist.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think there's so much empowerment that can come behind that. I'm right there with you. Write it down and then it becomes real, right? You have something tangible to really go off of. And I 100% believe in that. We have wrapped up our hour of coffee and conversions today. Amanda had to drop, busy lady. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, both of these ladies are wonderful, wonderful Forbes contributors. So I will be sending you some links to some of their articles in the follow-up. Make sure to connect on LinkedIn, reach out, get as much advice as you can. Kelly, thank you so, so much for joining us today.
This was fun. Thanks, Meg.
You bet. All right, everybody. Until next time, Happy New Year. Bye, everyone.